Bro, we're in Europe. Why the music don't sound European, bro? Yo, what the fuck is going on? Yo, the guy born here looks similar as the guy born on the other side. Whoa, this is so surprising to me. I have to ask the question, why?
I mean, you see, we have to erase our own thousands-of-year-old name on the basis of Western ignorance. You could have shown the facts.
I love this guy. Yeah, go debunk all the garbage Western European nonsense that is spreading too much. My gosh. Oh my gosh. I don't know what video this is.
Happens to me all
I don't
the
know.
time. Euphoria, put on some traditional music you listen to. Oh yeah, sure. Some good stuff. It's the Where's that from? It's Greek. It's from Greece. That's not Greek. That's Arabic. No, it's not Arabic. It's Greek. Yeah, it's clearly Arabic. Listen to how he's singing.
It sounds Arabic.
No, this is Greek. That is Arabic music.
This video has been demonetized.
Like Arabic or Middle Eastern music.
Demonetized already. The music alone, it's gonna demonetize me.
No, Greek music sounds Italian. Oh yeah, I know what you mean. It's like, get out of my house. What? Get out of my house. But you're in my house. Oh, you want to throw down? You want to fight, bro?
Okay. See, there is a sound in the current pop cultural mindset.
I don't know how
that
how does Italian sound?
Has ingrained itself into the collective consciousness of all the countries outside of Greece as the go-to representation of Greek music, all of Greek music. This sound has now become the national representation of Greece outside of this country. You see commercials for Sadorini, and you hear this style of music. You see
That's an interesting town.
You hear this style of music, but this style of music is very different from that heard in Sadorini, where they have Nisiotika. That's very different from the style of music in Crete. See, the style of music is specific to the Ionian Islands, and the Ionian Islands are interesting in that, well, it's a highly specific and regional sound. To represent the Ionian Islands as the representation of all of Greek music would be the equivalent of me finding the most remote Appalachian accent in the US and presenting it as the standard go-to North American accent, and it's simply not the case. It's a regional quirk, if you will. It's of a province. It's of a certain region. Furthermore, Ionian Island music is even more peculiar in that it is a sort of anomaly, if you will.
This is my first time hearing about this Ionian Islands. I don't know. This video is completely foreign, and it's 15 minutes long. Like, what in the world?
From a historical
I have no idea what I'm gonna get from out of this, honestly.
Share the developmental history of the rest of Greek music. Most of Greek music, its developmental history lies in ancient Greek music, and then the subsequent Middle Ages, what we would call Byzantine music. But Ionian Island music is a more recent imposition, if you will, that sort of circumnavigates all of that. It is fundamentally the music of the Italian conquerors of the Ionian Islands. See, the Ionian Islands, they were under Italian occupation for many centuries, and that's why their music sounds so similar to Italian music, with all those mandolins and those tarantellas and everything. So the music of the Ionian Islands, while now it is absolutely a part of the broader Greek legacy, and it is absolutely Greek music in a true sense, it is very far removed from all of the rest of Greek music. And this conflation of all of Greek music with Ionian Island music, I believe, reaches back to Zorba the Greek, which is this film made in the 60s with Anthony Quinn. This film is foundational to our stereotypical modern view of Greece across the world. And the song at the end is basically what everybody now associates with all of Greek music, and everybody just reduces all of Greek music to this fucking song, which is a very good song. And again, it belongs to the Ionian tradition, which is a very rich and incredible tradition, but it is simply not representative of all of Greek music as a whole.
I don't even know what Greek music sounds like. Now that I think about it, I have heard a lot of type of music, but I've never heard Greek music. Never. No. So, Ionian, whatever. I don't know, nigga. I really like, which is like kind of insane to me now that I think about it, because Greece is so like it's like so romanticized by the West, especially. Huh, I wonder why I never heard any Greek music.
People point to Cretan music as being the actual inspiration behind the Zorba song. They say it's based on Cretan music, but like you just listen to it.
Sounds nice though.
What would you say to somebody that hasn't?
Freaking ad. Ugh. I hate those
So
ads,
starting from the
man.
60s, you have this style of music that becomes very popular due to the movie, and now it has stuck as the representative of all of Greek music. But historically speaking, again, the fundamental DNA that defines Ionian island music is not that which defines most of Greek music historically. And most of Greek music historically is categorizable as being part of the broader oriental family, if you will. It was a primarily heterophonic, monophonic, ornamental, modal tradition. That is what defines characteristically 90% of Greek music from a historical point of view. You'll be noticing in this video that I repeatedly keep referring back to different forms of traditional music in Greece, and this is really part of the overall discussion, because the thing is that you know, this conceptualization of Greece, that it all sounds like this, it's very reductive, because Greek music, there's not one Greek music, there's many regional styles of Greek music that are extremely different from one another. So on one level, I think we shouldn't just take one style of Greek music and make it appear as if it's all of Greek music. But on the other hand, if you're gonna do it with one of them, Ionian might be the last one you should do it with, right? Because Ionian is the odd one out by far compared to all of the others. All of the others at least share some developmental DNA, some sort of fundamental similarities with one another, whereas Ionian is completely the odd one out, basically.
But why does Greek music even sound oriental in the first place? What happened to make it this way? Well, if you were to listen to most people, they'll tell you that it was the influence of the Ottoman Empire. The Ottomans, the Turks, they brought their influence to Greece. They replaced the native form of Greek music with their music. Or some people will say it was just Eastern influence, because Greece is right next to the East. But the answer is always it was influenced by the East. It was modified. It brought in foreign Eastern elements, and this is all completely wrong. And we know it's wrong because the historical evidence shows us that most of the things that make, Greek music sound oriental, these things were present in the Hellenistic era, thousands of years before the Arabs or the Turks could even have brought them to the Greeks. The things that make Greek music sound the way it does, for the most part, they're native to Greece. In fact, they seem to be internal Greek developments, and it's actually the Arabs and the Turks who adopted Greek musical practice and not the other way around.
Yes. That's everything with Greece. Everyone takes shit from Greece. Yes. Of course. Yes. Can't be Greece unless you have people taking shit from you. Am I right, folks?
The things that make Greek music sound oriental are, for the most part, native to this land. We know they were there in Hellenistic times. It's pretty plausible that they stretch back to the classical era of Socrates and etc. Perhaps they even go back to the era of the Messenian kings entombed here behind me. Maybe not, but that scenario is far more plausible than the idea that it's the Turks and the Arabs who brought it to Greece. That's just impossible, and we know it's impossible. It was there in antiquity, thousands of years before. But you can just go watch my video in which I explain this through historical data and sources and everything. That's not what I'm interested in exploring right now.
I actually want to ask another counter question in return, which is, why do we even ask this question in the first place? Think about it. Nobody ever asks, why does Arabic music sound Eastern? We just take for granted that it's supposed to sound Eastern. It doesn't even cross our minds to ask the question for Arabic music or Iranian music, why does it sound Eastern? Again, nobody ever thinks of asking why. We just accept it. But when it comes to Greek music, we do. Alternatively, nobody ever asks, why does French or Norwegian music sound Western? See, to me, the fact that
Yo, that's some real shit. And what the hell even is Eastern? Like, what? Technically, the Middle East, it's like, well, in the middle. Yeah, like, now that he actually puts it like that, that what even is Eastern? Yeah. Shit, bro, that got my head. Bruh, he just put a freaking paradox in my head, bruh. Oh my gosh, now that has me spinning. Oh my god, wait. Because what would define Eastern? And even then, like, what type of music would, like, how did we come to that conclusion that, oh yeah, this sounds like Eastern music? Ah, no, I can't. This is hurting my head.
The question
I can't. Holy shit, that's hurting my
why
head.
does Greek music sound Eastern? Why? Well, there's a inbuilt implication there. There's a premise there to the question already that it's not supposed to sound this way, that it shouldn't sound this way. See, we don't ask it for Iranian music because, well, we expect Iranian music to be Eastern because it's an Eastern culture. We expect it for the Arabs because, well, it's an Eastern culture, so of course it should have Eastern music. So the fact that we ask this question for Greek music shows that on some fundamental level, we do not perceive Greek culture as being in any way Eastern. We perceive it as being utterly and completely removed and separate from the East.
Yeah, Greece is associated with the West.
This is where the main subject of this video lies. See, in order to understand this whole issue, what we need to do is go back to the 19th.
Yeah, I mean, Greece has literally been. I always thought that was dumb. I'm not saying that because I agree, but I don't know. For some reason, Greece has always been considered West. Like what? That never really made any sense to me. But yeah, it's always been considered West.
Century to Western Europe precisely. You're at the height of European colonialism. You're at the height of sort of this sense of a European identity that has now dominated the world. And what happens is that Western Europe really creates
there is no European identity. There is no
European
European identity, but whatever.
And it latches onto ancient Greece. Ancient Greece in that time period is presented as the origin point of Western civilization, which is it very much is objectively. I don't think anybody with a reasonable understanding of history would disagree with this. The problem is it didn't end there. Western European thought of the 19th century didn't just latch onto ancient Greece as the origin point of Western civilization. It latched onto ancient Greece as if it were Western civilization itself, as if it were uniquely and exclusively Western and nothing else. It was really sort of formulated to be within the framework of what we refer to as the European miracle. Right, other lands were uncivilized and everything, and of course civilization sprouted from Europe. And of course now we know that not to be the case. The Greeks were an upstart civilization that were very young when far older, far more advanced civilization.
I was about to say.
Existed to the
I
east.
was about to say.
But this.
I was about to say, and that's true. Honestly, that's just like Western Europeans and their superiority complex. I've talked about this plenty of times.
Narrative was essential to Western European thought of the 19th century. That ancient Greece was itself a Western civilization in contrast to the East, opposed to the Eastern civilizations. That it was completely unlike the Achaemenid Empire, the Egyptians and everything. They were in one dimension, and Greece was in its own dimension of reality, which was European and Western. The problem is, how do you reconcile that with the reality of Greek culture, which is possibly the most oriental of all European cultures? How do you reconcile that with how their music sounds, with their food, with how they act, with so many aspects of their culture? Well, you need to find excuses for it. You need to find explanations for it. And the perfect explanation was found in the form of the Ottoman Empire. Oh, the Greeks were under Ottoman occupation for 400 years. So there we go. That explains everything. And anything in Greek culture that did not
match up with the perceived Westernness that Western Europe demanded of it, was thrown under the bus and explained as, oh, it's just Ottoman corruption. Oh, their food is similar to the Turks' Ottoman corruption. Their music sounds similar to Ottoman corruption. When they sing in churches, it sounds this way, Ottoman corruption. There's a big, I have papers that I will link in the description about this whole debacle when it comes to early Christian chant, and how Western European academics tried their hardest to go into denial and try to present current Georgian singing of Western Europe as the real, original, pure form of Christian singing, whereas actually Orthodox Greek chanting is relatively more similar to the earliest Christian chants, which we call Old Roman chant. Nowadays we call the Western European fascination for all things Greek and the Western European sympathy for the Greek cause, we call it Philhellenism, which would approximately translate to love of everything Greek, love of Greece, love of Greek culture. But the thing is, these Western European intellectuals, they weren't actual Philhellenes. They didn't actually appreciate Greek culture. They appreciated their fantasy of Greek culture, their idea of Greek culture as this completely Western culture, and anytime they encountered actual Greek culture, this incredible mix of Orient and Occident, they would reject that Oriental part and say, no, 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 that's corruption. You don't know what you're doing. You've been misled. You've been corrupted by the Ottomans. These supposed appreciators of Greek culture would go to Greece and tell them what their real culture is on the basis of, if it's not similar to us, then you're not actually Greeks.
Why will Westerners be confused by ancient Greek and Roman music being Oriental in their minds? The answer is that Western Europe has essentially culturally appropriated Greco-Roman antiquity to be the bedrock of their civilization, and so they can only picture it in a manner which is relatable for them. This appropriation goes up until the end of the Western Roman Empire, at which point the Eastern Roman Empire becomes Byzantine, Greek, or Oriental, because their own Western culture had actually started to develop at this point. The irony is that, in Greece's case at least, this cultural appropriation was sold back to us starting in the 19th century, with the ancient Greeks being Western, and with our history under the medieval Roman Empire and subsequent Ottoman Empire being Eastern, thus giving us the impression that we had Orientalized and that we had to go back to being Western. It's why classical antiquity has a place of privilege in modern Greece, while the subsequent medieval and Ottoman periods are denigrated, and why many Greeks will still say that many of the negative traits of modern Greeks are a leftover of Ottoman periods.
It was discussed.
Basically, yeah, the bullshit superiority complex of the West, Western Europe, and the cherry picking and nitpicking. Yep. Why am I not surprised? Goes back to what I was saying, where I saw people, Western Europeans, saying that Alexander the Great was blonde hair and blue eyes. Reminds me of that shit. And they were full on arguing this shit. Yep. Yep. My gosh. I mean, this is just absurd at this point, what these Western Europeans do. Not all, of course, but a lot of them do. Appropriating, cherry picking. It's just ridiculous now. Honestly. Like, at first it was hilarious, but now it's just like really starting to just like really boil my blood. Because, like I said in my videos, intellectual dishonesty is a serious thing, bro. Especially in a matter of history. This is... Whatever. I don't want to go on a rant yet, because we still have a long way until this video ends, but like... Whatever.
Because what you had was Western Europe continually cherry-picking whatever they approved of Greece as being truly Greek, and anything that did not match the narrative of the Westernness of Greece was, you know, Turkish corruption. Turkish, it's not really Greek, it's not really Greek, it's just a Turkish corruption. You have Westerners coming to Greece and they're saying, oh, this kind of music, it's not real Greek music. It's like, why do you say that? Well, because it sounds Oriental, it can't be Greek. Because it's Oriental, it must be Turkish. It's historical, and this is not only historical revisionism, it's geographical revisionism. It is impossible for Greece, due to its geographical location, to be 100% Western, nothing else. It will always have naturally, intrinsically, by default, due to its geographical position, aspects of Eastern civilization that are native to it. But they came up with this bullshit myth, and because the reality of Greece did not match up with this bullshit myth, well, they had to find excuses, and so you just blame it on the Turks. So it's a case of you create a narrative, and then you cherry pick the facts, and you twist the truth so that it can fit the narrative, because the truth actually doesn't fit the narrative, because the narrative is a lie. And then one may ask, why?
I love this guy. I love this guy. Yeah, go debunk all the garbage Western European nonsense that is spreading too much. My gosh. Oh my gosh. Round of applause. I'm not gonna clap because my freaking camera has AI, and every time I clap, it triggers the fucking AI, and then I have to pause the video and like reset it up. But like, I'm not gonna clap, but you can't see it. Round of applause for this nigga, bruh. Honestly, I'm learning a lot. I'm learning a lot here at the same time. So yeah, this is great.
Why is it that Ionian specifically was chosen to represent all of Greek music and not the others? Well, it ties back to this whole concept of the overall zeitgeist of the 20th century. You had centuries of Greece redefining its national identity through the lens of this complete pure European identity that is completely opposed to Orientality, and it just so happened that they happened to have one style of music that sounded completely Western. The only style of music that happened not to have these Oriental features was chosen to represent all of them, which is kind of funny, right? They've really chosen the exception, and the exception has now made its way to appear as if it's the rule in the minds of everybody.
This actually applies to a lot of aspects of modern Greek culture which to Western Europeans seem Oriental and are therefore assumed to be Ottoman impositions, even by many Greeks themselves, due to the influence of Western Philhellenes on the construction of modern Greek identity at the cusp of Greek independence and their particular European reception of ancient Greek culture.
But you know, none of this would have happened so easily had it not been for the acceptance of Greece. Because nowadays a lot of Greeks say that, oh, you know, the Western Europeans, they appropriated our culture, they tried to make it their own, and they came to our land and they start cherry picking and deciding what was really Greek and what was not for us. But yeah, it's very true, but Greece allowed that. Not only did it allow that, it gobbled it up. It absolutely accepted this narrative and went with it. Because you have to understand, it may be easy now in retrospect to be judgmental, but back then this was about liberating themselves from the Ottoman Empire. And so within this framework, Greece was more than happy to accept this narrative, and it absolutely went with it. It completely went with it, to the point where when you reach the Metaxas government in the 30s, if I'm not wrong, the Metaxas government starts actively banning Oriental sounding instruments that are associated with an Oriental sound, though they were part of the Greek heritage and had been for centuries, if not thousands of years. At this point, they were too heavily associated with the Turks and with the Orient, therefore they had to go. Because back then, the political necessity was to create this nation of Greece on the basis of this political narrative that it was the West incarnate, that we are Western, that we belong exclusively to the West, and that we are completely at odds with the East, etc. It was a case of, again, twisting the reality because you formulated a narrative that does not reflect the reality, and so now you have to correct reality to fit the narrative. A close equivalent that I know of personally as an Iranian is a lot of Iranians today.
Oh shit, bro. You know, speaking of Cleopatra, actually, we see this with Egypt too, right? Egypt. We see this shit with Egypt too. Egypt, not even technically, Egypt is an African country. Yes, it was in the Mediterranean and whatnot, but it was African. It was an African country. And I have seen Western Europeans try to like whitewash ancient Egypt and disregard it as an African country. I've seen it. Number one. Number two, there were black pharaohs. That's a fact. That's there were black pharaohs. Like, for fuck's sakes, there were black pharaohs. But you'll see like Western Europeans be like, oh no, that's not true. They'll whitewash it and be like, oh no, 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 no. There were never any native black ancient Egyptian. No. Fun fact, speaking of ancient Egypt, I did a DNA test on a different website. If you watch my ancestry DNA results, I said that I did do another DNA test on a different website because every website gives you different fucking results because they have different data and whatnot, etc., etc. But the other website that I did my DNA results, I actually got it back. I decided not to do a video on it because it was essentially the same as the one on Ancestry. Well, not really, but the only noteworthy thing was that it said that I was 1.2% Egyptian. So, like 1.2% Middle Eastern Arab. So, that's interesting. Freaking got Middle Eastern DNA in me somehow. But what the fuck was I saying? Yeah, ancient Egypt being fucking whitewashed. Yeah, the same bullshit is happening there too.
They will tell you, my land is not Iran, it is Persia. Do not say Iran, it is Persia. And these people are ignorant donkeys because Iran is our ancient name. Iran is our ancestral name. Persia is the Western exonym that the ancient Greeks coined. But you have some of these idiots actually going, I am proud to be Persia, not Iran. But the reason why is because in the mind of many of these Iranians, Iran, it reminds the West of terrorism. When you say Iran, they think terrorism and they think the government. If we say Persia, they think better. So, okay, so what the fuck does that mean? It's still our name. Like, what do you mean? You see, we have to erase our own thousands of year old name on the basis of Western ignorance. You should have shown the facts.
Oh my gosh. I didn't even know that. I thought Persia was what they called them, but wow. Like, I knew the name Iran was wasn't a modern name. I thought both names though. Were interchangeable. But I thought Persia was the more ancient name. Like, both names were old, yeah, but like I thought that Persia was just like the older one. But I didn't know that Iran came first and Persia was a freaking westernized. That's crazy.
Texas government. You could have showed them that, Uti, Kanonaki, etc. They were there way before the Turks had them, probably. The Byzantines were playing them. Hijazkar, this makam that sounds so oriental, it's actually, as far as we know, it originated in ancient Greece. This didn't matter back then. What mattered was associations of orientality. These elements were associated with the Orient, therefore they had to go. The facts do not matter when, in times of political duress, people need to create a certain narrative. Of course, I'm highly critical of this because in the immediacy of a certain decade, you can perform irreversible cultural damage. I mean, to think about it, this is crazy. You had Greece basically butchering parts of its own cultural legacy just because it didn't fit with a certain narrative. A narrative, mind you, that was fostered outside of its land.
And even today you speak to many Greeks. I know many Greeks who have given into this narrative that the original form of Greek music was a pure, unaltered Western European sound. And I often hear them say things like,
oh, the Ionian island music is the real Greek music. I often hear that a lot. Often Greeks will they're going to be ashamed. Like, no, this is not the real Greek music. This is real Greek music. And they'll show you Ionian music. It's incredible how people themselves can be so... No, it's not just the Greeks, many other peoples. The thing with colonization, with colonialistic attitudes like these, is that you don't need to colonize a people completely. You just need to put some ideas in their heads, and they will end up colonizing themselves by themselves. It's one of the most insidious things, I think, about these forms of colonization.
This kind of attitude, the attitude that has actually bought and internalized this foreign Northwestern propaganda, that you have lost your way, that everything Oriental in your culture is Ottoman corruption, that it doesn't actually belong to you. You show them that, oh, the Oriental parts, nothing to be ashamed of from a nationalist point of view. I don't have a nationalist point of view. If in Iranian culture you show that we have Arabic influences, great. We've become richer. I'm all for, I think cultures should intermingle and influence one another, but there are nationalists who don't like this. Let's consider their point of view. From a nationalist point of view, you tell yourself, well, they would be happy if you prove to them that actually, no, the things that you were ashamed of because you thought they were Turkish, they're actually native to you. They go back to a long line that goes back to ancient Greece in some examples, in some areas. You would think that they would find pride in this, and yet they get angry. Greeks in Canada, you tell them, no, the Oriental parts are native to you. A lot of them go, no. And they go into denial, and they don't want to accept it. Because deep down, the reality that Greece is a complex Eastern Mediterranean culture that has always had natural, intrinsic, native affinities with the Middle East. In other words, that as Greeks, they are intrinsically, on some levels, Oriental. That idea is so terrifying to them, so disgusting to them. They are so repulsed by everything that is Oriental and Eastern that they would rather choose the narrative in which they are victimized little sheep who have lost their original culture. They would rather proclaim, we have lost our original culture, but at least they get to say originally we were Westerners and nothing else. To these people, being a corrupted Westerner who has lost their way is preferable to admitting that they are both Western and Eastern on many levels.
When I was
Wow. It's funny. When I reacted to the Greek War of Independence, kings and generals literally said that the people, modern Greek people, literally forgot their past. I do remember kings and generals pointing that out. And I always wondered, if they forgot their past, what is it that now today, how did they suddenly become like so aware of their past? Right? Because ancient Greece, there's so much like details on that now, but back then it was like, yeah, we don't already know shit about our past, bro. Right? Like, how did they suddenly just find everything that they need, find all of their original like identity and all that? That was a question that I've always had. And honestly, it makes sense. They just became whitewashed. They just became whitewashed. Now you might be saying to yourself, wait, but like, bro, didn't like colonization? Didn't the Western Europeans like create your country and colonize you? Blah 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 blah. I mean, yeah. My country is literally a fucking product of Western European colonization. Without Western Europe, well, I wouldn't have my country, right? Like, the core part of my country is Western architecture, Western culture, all that shit. So, yeah. But when I see bullshit, I'm gonna call out bullshit.
Rhodos, I went to Monolithos. It's this beautiful little village in the southwestern parts of Rhodes. I met this fellow called Lucas, very interesting fellow, a Greek-Australian poet. He had many interesting observations that he gave me when it came to sort of the difference between diaspora Greeks and Greeks from Greece. And something that he told me was that diaspora Greeks are far more likely to really sort of cling to this idea that, no, we're Western, we're European, and, we have nothing to do with the Orient. I had this interaction once with a Greek from Canada, was born there, could not really speak Greek fluently or anything. He wasn't really that culturally Greek. It was just part of his heritage, if you will.
Greek Canadian. That's what you say. Greek Canadian. He's not Greek. He's Greek Canadian. He's Greek Canadian. Anyone who wasn't born somewhere and raised there for at least 10 fucking years of their life, well, yeah, 10 years. If you're born somewhere and you move kind of early, like, you are from where the hell you were born in, right? But you're just not, like, culturally, like that culture hasn't really been, like, embedded in you. But you are where the hell you are born in. But you have to be raised there, too. Because the reason why I say this is because there's so many people, right, who will say, who are fucking American, and they'll say, I am insert some country that their parents freaking usually fled from. I'm freaking migrated to America, right? Like, I'm, I don't know. Let me think of a country. Like, I'm Polish, but they're born in America and their parents fled from freaking Poland, right? And yeah, I hate when people do that. I hate when people do that shit. I do. Unfortunately, I'm not going to explain why, but I've just had some really bad experiences where I thought someone was from somewhere else and it turned out that they weren't. But anyways, let's continue.
And he was like, he looked like me, basically. You have some Greeks who look, who could pass for Germans, and you have some Greeks who could pass for Palestinians or Iranians or Syrians, etc. And I noticed that. I was like, oh, you look kind of like me. That's pretty cool. And he got agitated. I don't look like you. No, I'm white. I don't look like you at all. Don't say that you're brown. Again, I'm not saying all Greeks from the diaspora are like this. And I'm not saying
I'm crying, bruh.
From Greece were like this. And according to Lucas, at least, part of the reason would be that, well, they're from a Western country, and so they want to sort of, they've assimilated themselves more in there. And also remember that many parts of this diaspora are from the 40s. And so, according to Lucas, at least, many of these Greek Australians have been stuck in the 40s mentality of the Metaxas government and everything, where this complete and utter rejection of anything Oriental was at its most potent. And the influence of diaspora Greeks, especially in the Anglophone countries, Australia, America, especially Canada, I think should not be understated, because to a large degree, they are the ones that dictate our view of Greece. These are the ones, the Greeks who have the most potent influence on the world when it comes to the perception of Greece are the Jennifer Anistons. They're the Greeks who grew up in America. This attempt to artificially recreate Greece into a purely
I wouldn't even
Western
call
European
those
country,
people Greek.
It failed. It absolutely failed. You cannot get rid of elements that are so central to a culture, that are native to it, that have been in it for so long. You simply cannot do it that easily. You cannot uproot trees that have been in here for so long.
We could have planned this a lot.
There's also this phenomenon to take into account, which I call the magical wall effect, which is that whenever you have discussions about the nature of Greek civilization and antiquity in contrast with the East, well, it's always in contrast with the East, and there's always this, people talk as if there's somehow this magical wall between Anatolia and Europe. It's like funny, some people, people ask me, how come that the Turks, so many of them have blue eyes and fair skin? And I'm like, are you surprised that the Greeks have blue eyes? No. Are you surprised that Bulgarians have blue eyes? No. So why are you surprised that the Turks do? Like, but they're in the East. I'm like, yeah, but they're right next to the same place. Like they're literally. That's the funny thing, right? People have this expectation that, you know, that you're born on this side of the border, like 1 kilometer on this side of the border in Europe, you're supposed to be blonde, blue-eyed. Then 1 kilometer on the other side of the border, and you're supposed to be like Magohani brown. A lot of people have this idea about Middle Easterners that like we're all like the moment you cross the Bosphorus, everybody's literally brown. You know, it's like, yeah, I'm Iranian, right? Like look at that chocolate brown skin of mine and of my mother. It's like we're not surprised at the
And brown eyes is normal. That's the normal human trait. Blue eyes is recessive. Shit came from a genetic mutation. So if you are a person and you have brown eyes, that's how it's supposed to be. Same thing with colored skin. Colored skin is normal. Being white is not normal. Being white is a genetic mutation. New studies, people used to believe that being white came as an adaptation to less sunlight. Yeah, no. New studies have actually shown that people turn white or turned white because of their diets. They weren't getting enough. I forgot what type of nutrient. What type of fucking nutrient was it? They weren't getting enough of a specific vitamin. Specifically, the Europeans. Okay, the Europeans had shit diets. Or the people who would become Europeans, air quotes. They had garbage diets and they weren't eating healthy. So because of that, they weren't really getting the vitamins. I forgot which vitamin it was. You can go search this up because I'm not bullshitting you. Because of this, yeah, their skin turned white. It went pale as a result of that, as a consequence of that, right? So, yeah, being white is a genetic mutation due to lack of nutrition. So this is why when you have a baby that's mixed, one parent is white, one is black, even though both are technically supposed to be half and half. In some cases, you can get more from one side than the other, but on average, it's half and half, right? You inherit both, right? Inherit half genes from one side and obviously half from the other. Yeah, this is why you'll see the baby comes out like black, air quotes, black. That's why you see the baby come out with colored skin, not really like white. Like for the baby to come out like white, like they need to have an extreme, like I'm talking one parent has to be white and the other parent has to be like black, but like predominantly white, right? With black in it, right? For that shit. And even then, it'll still come out with color on the skin. Yeah, because colored skin is normal, so it's the dominant gene. White skin is not normal, so it's the recessive gene. I'm just simplifying shit. So of course, the normal gene is obviously going to come out, you know, first, like come out most likely, like naturally, right? So I'm saying all this shit because yeah, it just blows my mind seeing this whole like superiority complex of this whole I'm white. Like, okay. I'll see people like this in my comments too sometimes who will try and insult me because I'm black. I don't give a shit that I'm normal. I don't give a shit that I'm normal. Like, oh my goodness. Why do you think white people age terribly? I'm not saying that as an insult, but like, why do you think white people age terribly? Because the melanin in their skin, which is literally there to protect you from the sun, is gone. Oh my gosh, dude. Like, to give you an idea, to give you a better idea of what I mean by that, right? Imagine you have a dog, right? Imagine you have a dog, and that dog loses all of its fur because over the course of God knows how long, it was eating, like it wasn't getting the proper nutrients it needed, right? And we all know what fur on a dog is used for, right? How the fur helps the dog. I don't need to explain that. Imagine someone goes and says, that dog is superior because it lost its natural protection due to a genetic mutation. And all it has is its bare skin left over, right? You just see the bare skin left over, right? That the fur was like covering. Yeah, that sounds retarded. Shit, demonetized. But I mean, yeah, that's how these like white superiority, white supremacists. That's how they sound. Like that's literally like so dumb. Like the logic of these white people who think that, oh, because I'm white I'm superior. It's just so dumb. Because when you put that logic of that analogy, that example that I did, because it's the same shit. It's the same shit with humans, except the fact that instead of losing fur, some humans lost their melanin that protected them, and now they're saying they're superior because of it. And they're saying that the normal humans, which are people of color, that includes black people, Middle Eastern people, people of color, people who have a tan, they're saying that people who have a tan aren't normal. And people who have a tan are inferior, even though that is literally the normal way of that is the normal natural characteristics of a human being. Being white is not normal, and being white is not a normal characteristic of a human being. It is a genetic mutation. It didn't come from no fucking adaptation to the sun. No. I'm just repeating what I'm saying so that you guys hear it. Because I'm about to unpause. Conclusion, right? That's basically what I'm just doing a short conclusion. All right. But yeah, so yeah.
Turks have Eastern music, but you move 1 kilometer on the other side of the border and suddenly it's supposed to all sound like Mozart sonatas. People have this idea that, again, there's this magic wall, and the moment you cross, suddenly you're supposed to be in a different universe, as if these cultures are not literally next to one another. Why are we surprised that the Greeks are more culturally similar to the Turks on so many levels than they are with the French?
Oh yeah, the music sounds Eastern. You're in Turkey, you know, makes sense. Yeah, totally, makes sense. You're in Turkey. That's how the music is supposed to sound. We're in Turkey right now.
Whoa! What does it sound like? Hey, dude, why does the music sound Eastern? Bro, we're in Europe. Why the music don't sound European, bro? Yo, what the fuck is going on? Yo, the guy born here looks similar as the guy born on the other side? Whoa! This is so surprising to me. I have to ask the question, why?
You know, this is... I really don't want to be like rude or anything, but there's people politely asking me, I am so surprised. I hear Greek music and I was shocked and surprised. Do these people understand the concept of physical space? Of distance, you know? And then you have the people saying, no, well, it's because the Ottomans conquered the Greeks. And see, again, this is still circumventing the problem, because it assumes that no, Greece left to itself would have had European sounding music, you know. And the only way it can ever have music similar to the Ottomans is if the Ottomans conquer Greece, control it, and then implement cultural policies to modify the culture. Or, you know, maybe they're both from the same fucking region. And therefore, they will have the same features of the same fucking region. But the problem is, people say they're not the same region. Turks are in Asia and Greeks are in Europe.
therefore one is supposed to be European and the other should be Asian.
I think the dumbest comment that I ever got, it's the stupidest thing perhaps that I'd have ever heard in my life. It's a comment that was left on one of my videos. And usually, you know, I know that it's not necessarily good form to speak ill of people who took time to watch one of your videos, but this comment, it was about how there was once a theory 100 years ago that maybe there's a connection between Japan and Greece because they had some super vague, basic similarity in their music that's like extra basic. And so basically, the conclusion nowadays is that no, of course there's no connection musically between the two. There's no, or at least this similarity between the two doesn't need to be explained by some ancient connection between the two civilizations. It's whatever, it's very basic. It's basic enough that you can just assume it happened independently in both places. But somebody offered me a checkmate of a comment. They said, well, I think the theory makes a lot of sense because the resemblance between these two cultures in Greek is called the Phrygian mode. And Phrygia is in Asia. Therefore, it belongs to the Asiatic cultures, just like Japan.
I literally want to die.
Like, I literally just didn't, I was just like what do you say to something like this? Honestly, like, how do you respond to a comment like this? Because it's like, it's in Asia, therefore it's more connected to Japan than it is to mainland Greece, right fucking next door.
There's a category of humans out there, they prioritize terms and abstract categorizations over
This is so... I'm gonna let him talk here because I do have an interesting thing to say.
pure basic material reality.
Music sounds Turkish, not European.
Now, there are people who are reasonable enough that they can recognize that this magic wall obviously does not exist, and they can recognize that the Middle East and Greece are geographically contiguous, and therefore they are culturally contiguous in many ways. However, you still see the persistence of this narrative of Greece as a Western civilization, as a uniquely and exclusively Western civilization. Whenever people do remark that there are Greek similarities with Turkish or Iranian or other similar civilizations, they will always say it's Middle Eastern influence. What does influence mean? Let's look at it like the definition of influence. What influence means is something that is not intrinsically of that entity, but that it was introduced from an external entity. It came from somewhere else, but this entity of itself would never generate that. They will recognize similarities with the Middle East, but they would say, well, these are influences. In other words, Greece is a Western culture that was orientalized, but intrinsically it's Western. In and of itself, if Greece was left alone, it would have never had those things to begin with, because how could it? It's Western, it's European. Anything produced by Greece, locally, within Greece, must conform to our idea of what is Western. But it's not the case historically. And what you realize now is so many things that are typically Eastern were conceived, developed, cultivated, and propagated by Greece. This secures Greece's place as one of the great Eastern civilizations, as much as it is also one of the Western civilizations. And why should that surprise us? Greece gave birth to the West, yes, but it was born out of the East. It was born out of the contact and the cultural exchange with Egypt, with Mesopotamia, with Iran, ancient Iran. That's where it came from. That's where it was born out of, the Eastern Mediterranean. Yes, Greece is the mother of Western civilization, but that doesn't mean she has to be fully Western herself. My mother is not me. My mother is from somewhere. She has her own identity. She has her own aspects that obviously were handed down to me, and I owe a lot to her. We're very similar, my mother and I, but she's still a distinct person. And I think that's how Greece should be understood. See, it's very funny because people, they hear how Greek music sounds Oriental, Ottoman corruption, Ottoman influence. The real Greek stuff is the Western stuff, but it's actually the other way around. The Oriental elements are the ones that are native to this land, and the foreign imposition, the foreign sort of colonial influence in music is the one found in the Ionian Islands. It's the one that sounds Western.
Under the Venetians, Greeks assimilated Italian music and harmony in a popular tradition. Greeks subjugated the Ottoman Turks, resisted cultural assimilation.
Greek music cannot be orientalized because you cannot make a tomato into more of a tomato. You can't tomatoify a tomato. Greek music was never orientalized, but Greek music was westernized.
The theme of this video is not answering the question, why does Greek music sound Eastern? Rather, it is to show that us even asking this question in the first place is absurd. If we had a proper understanding of Greece, if we...
Not me. Remember what I said at the start of the video? I had no idea what this video was going to be about. And I literally said at the start, I never understood why Greece is considered Western. I always thought it was Eastern. Because, like what he said, the geography. Like, it's right, the geography is literally right there. But before I continue, yeah, this is like those people, those Europeans who, not even just Europeans, but a lot of people in general who just like me, right? Now I'm Creole, right? A person mixture of European African descent. I'm Creole, yeah. Probably with a bit of other DNA that I don't know about, because according to other websites, I don't know, I had like fucking Egyptian or some shit. But I'm predominantly African and minority European, right? But I'm like 1/10 European. I'm just going to, according to the data that I just have right now, I'm 1/10 European, and I'm like predominantly African. That's Creole, right? No, I'm black. Never said not. But people will look at me crazy because I'll say, yeah, I'm English. And they'll be like, how? Like, that's not possible. Like, you're black. How are you English? How are you British? And then when I just, because, not everyone knows everything. And when I, like, politely just tell them, like, well, yeah, colonialism. Colonialism. Yeah, that happened, They'll be like what he said. People think there's like a fucking magical barrier. But a lot of people don't realize is that culture can be fucking exported too, right? So people think that, like, I deal with the same nonsense too, because people think that any and everything that's in Europe, it's in Europe. It can't go nowhere. It can't go anywhere. It can't be passed on anywhere. It can't go beyond Europe. And I get these morons who look at me and be like, yeah, you can't be British. That's not possible. You're black, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, dude, just go on Google Barbados. Just go Google Barbados. Like, there's a reason why they call it the most British Caribbean island. Like, and they'll be like, that's not true. I'll get niggas like this who'll be like, you're not in Britain. It's not in Britain. So it can't be British. Like, what? Like, you're telling me that culture can't be fucking passed on to other places? Can't be exported to other places? Like, what?
We truly understood Greek culture. If we did not have a distorted view of Greek culture, we would never even think of asking this question. It would just be natural to us. Somebody would ask, why does Greek music sound Eastern? And any normal person would say, why are you even asking the question? It's Greece. What else should its music sound like? But we have a distorted view of Greece. A view that we have established has roots in, colonialistic and imperialistic narratives and was solidified by the Greeks themselves during the previous century. However, this view is still alive today, as evidenced by our modern perceptions. So now let's look at how this view, we've looked at how it was born. Now let's look at how it is still kept alive. And I believe the answer lies in tourism more than anything else.
Tourism.
It's like a curse weighing on an entire landscape, and whoever goes too deep into this has his share of that curse, full of obscenity, vile and base.
What is going on?
Now, obviously, tourism has some part to play in all of this, but there's two types of tourist music in Greece. There's the ones that you can hear behind me, if you can hear it. I don't know if you can hear it, but you've got these tourist resorts and those beaches where, you know, Americans just come here and they just want to sunbathe in the beach and they just want to eat the exact same food they would eat in America anyway and just drink the same cocktails and hear the exact same music, just Western pop music and dance music and everything. And they have absolutely no interest whatsoever in Greek culture. They couldn't give a single fuck about what this country's about, what its history is about. They just want to sunbathe in somewhere that's warm and get their mojitos and cocktails and whatever. It could be Mexico as far as they care. You think that I would be blasting those people and that I would be sort of laughing at them, but actually I don't. I think it's perfectly fair. It's perfectly fine to come to Greece for that. Why not? You know, it's fair enough. You want to go somewhere warm? Okay. My problem is rather with a second type of tourist. No, you see, the Greek tourism music that I don't like and that kind of poses a problem for me is what I call the Greek tourist folk music, which is basically this commodified sound that is entirely based within that Zorba universe. It is effectively, essentially Ionian island music in its essence. Any taverna that is in front of the seashore of touristic destinations like Naxos or Paros or Santorini, etc., they will be playing this style of music. Now, you might be wondering, what's the problem with that? Well, again, let's harken back to the point about Greek regional music. The music of the Cyclades does not sound like Ionian island music. This kind of music, if you know the first thing about Greek regional music, you'd know that this kind of music has nothing to do with the Cyclades. This is not the sound of the Cyclades. It should be Nisiotika. This is actually the sound of Santorini. But you would never have that in a touristic place. Tourists would be completely dumbfounded upon hearing this because it goes completely contrary to the expectations. This Ionian sound has become so dominant in our understanding of Greek culture internationally that there's absolutely no way that you could ever have this happen in a Greek restaurant.
Video has been demonetized. I like this music better. That music sounds a lot better. I like this more.
Trust me, I know.
I wasn't really feeling the other music that he was playing. I like that music more.
Every day in the comments of my Byzantine songs and the comments of my Greek songs, I have people saying, what is this? Why does it sound Arabic? Why does it sound Arabic? It sounds Arabic. It's Arabic. Believe me, that is the norm, unfortunately. That's the problem that I have because, see, these kind of resorts, like the one that I was showing you before, they don't pretend to be Greek culture. They're not bullshitting anyone, and the people going there, they're not bullshitting themselves. Unfortunately, 99% of people who do come to Greece with the intent of enjoying the culture don't actually care about the culture. Not the real culture. Like the Philhellenes of the 19th century, they come here expecting the version of the culture that they've been fed. It's a vicious circle. You feed them an idea through pop culture. They come here expecting the idea from pop culture. So Greece itself has to cater to that idea from pop culture so that it doesn't end. And you know the funny thing is, if you go to restaurants that are by the seashore, aka those that are frequented by tourists, you have Ionian island music in places where it actually doesn't belong, like the Kyklades or the Vaticanis. But you just go a few streets inside the city into the tavernas where, you know, there's no tourists,
and you'll hear more local music. I actually have a formula for it. If they serve kokoretsi, they're gonna have actual Greek music of the actual region.
I want to try that.
Because tourists don't want to
Grilled intestines wrapped around lungs, kidneys, and other organs. What the hell? What the heck?
And they certainly don't want to hear actual nisiotika. Not most of them. You know what you just heard there? It could have been in Paris for all I knew. It could have been Italy. It could have been France, literally. But again, like, what do you expect? You expect them to play Armenaki, melismas in Hijaz? Of course it's not going to happen. No, you just play the most commodified, the most safe, the most inoffensive, diatonic, Western European sounding tunes. Just use the Ionian repertoire, even though it is not at all representative of the Kyklades. And here those people are in the Kyklades going, wow, we are experiencing the Greek authentic culture. You're fucking not, mate. You have no idea. I refer back to this anecdote that establishment owners in Sadorini told me about, which is that up until midnight, they're there with the bouzouki and the guitar, and they're playing Ionian style music. And the tourists, they come there and they leave at midnight, and the tourists tell themselves, oh, I have just experienced Greek culture. I am so culturally enriched. And then the moment they're gone, that's what they told me. The establishment owners, like, okay, they put the bouzouki away, they put the guitar away, they get the lauto out, they get the lira out, they get the bagpipe out. Okay, now let's start playing our actual traditional music, nisiotika. I just found that very funny. Now,
No way!
I have to add a clarification because...
No way! What?
If you do YouTube long enough, and I've done it for only 1.5 years now...
Bro,
but
his skin...
I've already learned...
Bro, his skin is majestic. Look at his skin, bro.
When you make this kind of content where you talk about stuff, you will say something very reasonable and nuanced, and then people who just want to disagree for the sake of disagreeing, they will take what you said and twist it into a caricature and oversimplification, something that you haven't actually said, which is what we call making a statement. And then they will attack you and pretend that you've said that. So I know for a fact that the previous statement, somebody is already writing in the comments, so you're saying that literally the only music that should be played in Cyclades Island is literally only Cyclades music? We should outlaw anything other than that? That's pretty reductive. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's great that we have jazz in the Kyklades. It's great that we have Ionian Island music. Why not? What I'm saying is, it is rather absurd that you can find music from another unrelated region from Greece. You can find electronic dance music. You can easily find Ed Sheeran music as a tourist, but you cannot easily access the music of the Kyklades themselves whilst in the Kyklades. Especially, mind you, when so much of the premise of the Greek tourism industry relies on the idea that it is offering tourists an insight on the actual Greek culture, an authentic insight. Yes. An authentic insight into the actual authentic Greek culture. But the thing is, you go to the Kyklades and you can't actually hear nisiotika. That's kind of absurd if you take that into account. The fact that you can find jazz there, but not the actual music of the region. See, if we were talking about a tourism industry like that of the Dominican Republic, for example, as far as I know, the Dominican Republic's tourism really isn't centered around providing an authentic cultural experience or anything like that. It's just, come to our beaches and get a tan, basically. I have no problem with that. That's why I like Mykonos, for example. I like these kind of places, those beach resorts and everything, because they're not bullshitting anyone. It's, we have warm weather, here come get a tan, slurp down mojitos and cocktails, listen to Ed Sheeran songs, and eat burgers, and when you leave, you might as well have been in Puerto Rico or Mexico or the Dominican Republic as far as you care. That to me is a perfectly noble thing. I have absolutely no problem with this because it's completely honest. It's not bullshitting anyone. It's not bullshitting anything. But again, the problem with the Greek tourism industry is the idea of Greek culture that it offers to tourists is for the most part a product, a commodified, invented, fictionalized oversimplification of Greece that appeals to the Western mindset and the foreign mindset as a whole, not just Western, but primarily based on decades upon decades of political narratives and cultural constructs based in pop culture and etc. Traditional Greek dance. Zorba dance. I love how there's one here about Pontic dances, and there's like akrites, you know, and they didn't even bother writing in English, you know. They just write in Greek because tourists don't give a fuck about those, you know. So it's interesting how the ones written in English, Zorba dance, and then the actual historical, you know, thousands of years old dances, just write them in Greek. They won't even bother putting them in English because why would they? Tourists don't give a shit.
This sounds a lot better. Bro, the actual cultural stuff sounds so much better. This sounds so much more lit. Oh my gosh. Than the freaking whitewashed one. And people like that? Like, what?
Was in October of 2021.
I don't know, man. That's just me.
And my first day was
That's just my opinion.
And within the first hour of being in Corinthos, I'm asked for directions by Greeks. And, you know, I talked to some Greeks afterwards, and I'm like, why am I being asked for directions? They're like, oh, we thought you were Greek. Oh, you look Greek. And people just tell me that all the time. Oh, you look Greek. You could be Cretan villager. I get that a lot. You look like a Cretan villager. Maybe I need to go have the sariki around my head and Rachi, you want some fucking Rachi, bre? I'm sure that's a terrible impersonation. I'm sorry to Cretans. You know the funniest part? My initial reaction was, you're not allowed to say that. I didn't say that out loud, of course, but that was what I was thinking. I was like, you can't say that. Because what I was taught all my life was that 2,500 years ago, my ancestors, the Iranians, they came to these lands. They were met with the resistance of the white European race, represented by Leonidas, who fought the brown oriental race, represented by the Achaemenid Persian Empire. And you know, that's what 300 thrives on. That's an idea that a lot of people still thrive on and still believe in very strongly.
Bro, Greeks are fucking brown people. Holy shit. What? Greeks are brown people. What? Okay.
I think those ideas that are inherited from the...
Or, like, colored people. I mean... Yeah. No. I would say Greeks are kind of... Like, they can be pale, but... no, they're pretty tan. They're pretty tan.
Ideals of 20th century imperialism and Western European views of the world and history. They're the ones that dictate that, if you will. And it was a revelatory moment for me, where after that I was like, well, yeah, of course, like our physical appearances overlap a lot, our music overlaps, our pastries, so much of our culture. We all have a very siga sort of attitude in those countries. We're kind of chaotic, we're not too orderly. There's a lot of similarities, of course, and it made me realize that, you know, Leonidas and the Spartans and Xerxes, it wasn't blonde, blue-eyed Western Europeans fighting the brown Orientals. It was largely similar-looking peoples with cultures that were relatively more similar to one another than Leonidas' culture was similar to the Celts, right? Because you think of this idea of European identity and Western. Leonidas was fighting for Europe and for the West and for the white race. It's like, who were the Greeks more culturally similar to back then?
None of that shit existed back then in the first place. That's just modern BS, man. It needs to stop. The Celts had nothing similar to the Germans. The Celts had nothing similar to the Romans, who essentially just freaking genocided them, like in Gaul. You think the Romans gave a damn about European identity when they were genociding the Celts in Gaul? You think the Germans gave a shit when they invaded Britannia and also almost wiped out the Celts there too? You think the Germans cared when they were too busy invading the freaking Roman Empire in the West? No. Or when Rome was trying to conquer, Germania, right? Or when the Slavs had a conflict with the Romans. I mean, do you see my point? You see my point? Like, where the hell did this shit come from? This stupid shit of European identity. It's stupid. It's dumb. It's absurd. Goes back to what I was saying in yesterday's video, where I reacted to Russia, and we had morons who were saying that Russia isn't European, even though literally half of Europe is literally Russia. It's like these people who invent this garbage European identity, or whatever the hell you want to call it, it's like they just cherry pick and they just invent new shit as they go along the way. It's like, wait, this doesn't fit my narrative. Okay, yeah. This is the new narrative now. Oh, I don't like this. Oh, I'm gonna rewrite the whole picture. Like, you see? Oh my god. I be seeing these edits, bro. I be seeing these fucking edits of like, oh, Europa edit or Europe edit, and it's some stupid shit like, oh, welcome to Europe, and all I see is just Western European shit, and I barely see any shit from like Eastern Europe. I'm like, where is Russia? Where is Belarus? Where is Serbia? Where's all that? Oh my gosh, dude. It's like, it's just pseudo BS. And they just literally create / invent things as they go. That's all they do. Like, out of nowhere, they just invent new definitions. Yeah, definitions. Fuck. Overbite problem. Gotta get braces for that shit. But they just invent new shit as they go. Like out of thin air.
Were they more culturally similar to the fucking Celts in north of Hadrian's Wall? It didn't exist back then. Were they more culturally similar to the Celts in Great Britain? Were they more culturally similar to the people right next to them? The Persians, with whom they had so much, and the other Iranians, with whom they had so much contact, so much contiguous.
There has always been an exchange between Greece and the East. When people think of history, they usually focus in the wars, battles, famous generals, and so on. But between those periods of conflict are literally millennia of cultural movement, influences, and ideas going back and forth. As a Greek, I can't really picture what our own culture would look like without Egypt and Persia at our doorstep. I was talking with an Iranian girl who came to Greece to study, and she told me that she did not need any time to culturally adjust to the country. There are differences, of course, but she feels that the city around her is familiar, the food compatible, the weather relatable, and she said that Greek music sings to her.
There are two Greeces. There's the actual historical Greece, the real Greece, a complex Eastern Mediterranean culture that always inhabited both East and West and has naturally attributes of both, and is defined by that cultural richness and duality. And then there's the made-up Greece, made up by the Philhellenes, made up by this Western European narrative of 200 years ago.
This is partly why even to this day, Greeks call themselves
Kathi mas Anatoli,
which could be rendered our own East, our East. It is like the Greeks acted as some weird conduit, maybe even a refinery of sorts, between what we consider the Eastern and Western culture and tropes.
As an Orthodox elder I heard said recently, the very emblem of the Orthodox Church is the two-headed eagle, facing both East and West, which defines its true nature.
But one may now ask, Faria, is that really just the whole point of the video? Did you just make this video in order to tell us that Greece is culturally both Eastern and Western? Is that the end of it? Well, no, there's obviously a bigger point that I'm trying to allude to. Looking at Greece, its culture, its identity, its history, and understanding it without any preconceived biases leads us to a conclusion that the Western cultural zone and the Eastern cultural zone are not separate boxes, but rather a Venn diagram, overlapping circles. They influence one another. They have shaped one another. Of course, the more you move to the extremes, the more different they are. Certainly Iran is entirely Eastern, and certainly France is entirely Western, but there is this overlapping area which pretty much matches the Balkans, basically. And I think most Balkaners would agree to this. Bulgarians, Serbs, even Romanians to a large extent, I hear them. They often express that feeling to me, that they feel sort of in between East and West. Moreover, when looking at the history of music, when looking at the history of this region, we have to accept and understand that when you're dealing with antiquity, these cultural spheres do not exist as they do today. And, you know, the Romans fighting the Parthians were screaming, long live the European white Western civilization. As long as we keep to these, I don't think we'll ever have a good understanding of history. And thankfully, most people don't have it anyway. It's just that we still have doses of it, I think, here and there in the way that we talk. The very fact that we ask the question, why does Greece have Eastern music, shows that we haven't completely understood that yet. We haven't learned our lesson yet. In a world where we perfectly understood our lesson, we would never ask, why does Greece have Eastern music? We would just, you know, somebody would ask, why does Greece have Eastern music? And somebody would say, because it's Greece. What the fuck do you expect? The era in which these cultures form requires us to do away with notions of East and West. And by the time the Middle Ages come in and we can safely start seeing the formation of the Eastern and Western cultural spheres, we still see an overlapping of them, and certain geographical zones are within that overlapping area and therefore answer to that. This is Cape Tripiti. This is the southernmost point in all of Europe. Europe literally does not go more to the south than this. Over there is Libya, and a little bit over there is Egypt. Egypt, which had its history intertwined with that of Greece during most, if not all, of antiquity. Of course, you have the early Egyptian influences on the nascent Greek civilization. You can think of the artistic influences on the Kuri statues, for example, with the archaic smile. And later on, Pythagoras traveling to these lands, bringing back so much of the wisdom of the sciences. And then later on, the Greeks, well, at least Greeks, would become the rulers of Egypt through the Ptolemaic dynasty. The reason I'm saying all of this is because when you look at the history of Greece, it was always deeply connected to those lands that we would call Oriental or Eastern. In a fundamental way, it was always one of them, right? I will die on that hill. I'm literally on a kind of hill. Hopefully I won't die here, but I will die on that hill that there is no, the Achaemenid Empire, the Phoenicians and everything, but Greece is special. Greece is, no, it was one of them. It was one of those civilizations. And that's what makes this country so beautiful. That's what makes this country so amazing. It has such an amazingly rich culture. It is defined by that dual identity. It's such a foundational aspect of its identity that to want to cherry pick only the Western aspects or the other way around. You know, in 400 years, if the geopolitical situation changes and another counter narrative is created, where now suddenly Greece has to be presented, I'd be the first one, I'm not going to be alive in 400 years, but I'd be the first one to say, no, this is also bullshit. It's really that dual identity that makes it so incredibly rich. I find it really sad that on the global level, we do not appreciate Greece for what it is. Greece, I believe, is actually a very misunderstood culture. Because that should be the selling point in tourism marketing, right? The land between East and West. Like that should be the first thing that comes to mind when somebody thinks of Greece. That should be the advertising stuff, right? That's how we should perceive it in the global pop culture, but we don't perceive it that way. We perceive it as this fully European, fully Western, you know, gentle little Mediterranean country that's inoffensive, that's, you know, just a quirky little version of Italy. There's such a grit to this country, such a powerful orientality to it that is only made more beautiful by the fact that it is joined with the westernness of it. It's the only place on earth where the people can at once be just like the Italians and just like the Iranians and have attributes of both and remind you so much of both. And to want to deny this is such a shame. Somebody once told me, a Greek, he once told me, Faria, to not embrace and appreciate the Eastern aspects of Greece is to not embrace Greece, because that's what Greece is, natively, intrinsically, inherently, not due to Ottoman destruction of the real Greek culture and replacement with foreign Oriental aspects. These Oriental aspects are built in the very nature of this land through its geographical location. I'm just gonna say nothing more from now on, so you can just log off the video, basically. I said I'm not gonna, so you can,
Because I want to, like...
Okay. Okay. Well, you made it all the way here. And if you did and you're new, you like my reactions, go subscribe. If you have any videos like this that you would love to see my reaction to, comment it in the comments below. Eventually, I will do it. If you want your reactions to be done faster and you're an active viewer, guys, I recommend you become a channel member. It's only 99 cents a month. I purposely made it cheap for active viewers. Okay. The link is going to be in the comments to all the perks that you get. But believe me, it is worth it. Currently, I have 7 members. As we get more members, I will expand the perks. But make sure you turn the bell notifications on too. So that you get notified every day at 10 a.m. Yeah, go check out my other reactions on my channel like this, man. Thank you for watching and goodbye.